Yes.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Good.
Yes. Okay. Great. And great. Thank you, Matteo. So we were saying why so many people love football. Well, so there are many reasons given. One is because it's so easy to play. And this is undoubtedly true in the sense I have a kid, a 9-year-old kid, and whenever we often just take a ball with us, and wherever we go, where there's a little grass, a little space, we just throw the ball on the ground and we start playing football. It's very easy to play in different cases, in different circumstances. So that's one, of course, one of the reasons. Now this is a bit circular in the sense that it supposes that you're already familiar with it. So I don't know. So
And also the fact that you can, unlike other sports, you can play football regardless of body type and available space, and you don't require things. It's really easy. You can start even playing with a rock. I remember playing with rocks like
yeah. You can even without the ball. Yes. And this thing of the physical types used to be true also for professional football. It's a bit less true today because I mean, if it's funny to watch, like if you're watching the football teams in the 80s. And they were so slim, and now they're all like little boxers most time, and almost all the same. Almost not thin, but not too thin, but very muscular. Because I mean, and capable of speeds which were unthinkable 20 years ago. So, of course, I mean, the specialization for professional footballers led to a sort of uniform physical features, but of course not uniform style of play, which is incredibly varied also today, unfortunately.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And I mean, I would say that today's football, I don't know if it has anything to do with age, but I think we sort of miss the personalities that we used to have. Everything from Maradona to Socrates to people who sort of fused football with actual society and sort of made football matter to everyone, especially to the poor. We don't really have that anymore. Football has become more of a, especially if you hope to watch it like live in a stadium, it's going to be something super expensive that's almost exclusive to the elite nowadays. I would argue. Well, at least in most countries.
Yeah, well, that's becoming more and more true. What can I say? If that will happen, a major part of it and of the meaning of it will be lost, because like I tried to show in these slides, both the two things you pointed out to. So both the roots in a sort of society, in an equal society in some form. And which are most of the roots of football. So the fact that many teams came out from like this socialist society or unite workers or things like this on one side, and on the other side, the role of football as let's say like a metaphor for tribal confrontation. Of course, it requires two tribes to watch, and of course, it's a way to have a playful confrontation. At least that's how it's meant to be, and it's mostly felt like this, and to dispel, of course, the gods of war. So if we use both aspects and it becomes a purely commercial a tool for entertainment, losing more and more meaning, I think this will make it decay as a meaningful human activity.
Sadly, what I would say is that losing meaning doesn't mean it becomes less popular. It just becomes less meaningful, but equally popular. I wouldn't argue that less people are interested in football. I would argue that the ways in which people interact with the sport, and with the people playing it, and with its metaphors and with its meanings and everything, is following the trend of the era, is scarier and less joyful than it used to be and should be.
Well,
anyway, this is way too heavy, I think.
Well,
it's
no, I think, but I think maybe it's still because it has this vestige, this remains of lightness and ritual. The two things go together. That's what's particular of sports. They're both very ritualistic, and if you see, like in today's championships or World Cup, the importance given to symbols like the trophy, the ball, and so on, they're clearly treated as secret objects. So it's as many people have observed, is the modern religion is not what is commonly called religion. It's actually called football. And this is not several anthropologists observed this. It's clearly, for an anthropologist, football is very easy to grasp, and with all its ritualistic forms. These forms are not disappearing. These are actually essential to the sport. Then its relationship with how it's handled with management society, it's always been a bit problematic, because it's always been, even from the start, it's been used by authoritarian regimes, but like everything else. So it can be used, like in Brazil, to lead a revolution against authoritarian regime, or it can be used like Mussolini did for reinforcing regime. So that's excellent point. That there's a dialectical value to everything. So, admittedly, it always had those aspects to it. Yeah, I think that there's an anarchical side of it, which is very strong. So, the message of it. So, I think the regime must be careful with this stuff.
Because you have excited people all together in public. Those things are never safe for any regime. To be honest. So anyway, I'm now going a bit through the slides. One thing that I didn't really know anything about, almost anything about, and surprised me so much, is that football has, from the 20s, where it became more popular, 20s and the 30s, that it was so popular among artists and poets, and I really had no idea. So, and also in the socialist revolutions and in futurism, and all through the history of Italian poetry. So as you see in the slides here, all these beautiful futuristic works depicting football, and if you see, I will link it, the World Cup manifestos are really, really beautiful, and I think they did a really good job for the latest, for this championship, because this linking to the history of football really looks nice. Yes, it's very successful aesthetically. I mean, it really nails it.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that too.
And I think that this movie, if one really wants to get what idea of football we are expressing, what perspective of football, which is it's of course non-standard, at least. We're working on football drama. I think that watching the forgotten World Cup, il Mondial Dimenticato, it can really tell you a lot. It's really inspired us though the setting is completely different because this is set in the 40s, and football drama is set in the contemporary England. But the spirit of the thing that we are trying to emulate is like in this great fake or not fake, I will not spoil it, fake documentary. I don't know, did you see it?
No, sadly not. I have actually noted that it's really high on my to-see list, but you know, things have been pretty hectic lately.
Yeah, so, with your book.
That not only, honestly, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, mostly with the book. But I will be taking some time off, like a week in July and probably another week in September. So this and Jim Henson's Lab, Dark Crystal, actually, are the two things I have decided to really watch. And also the World Cup in with me. Yeah. really give it a go.
And yeah, well, this is all from this crazy.
This is what is this gentleman wearing? Seriously, the one before Baggio.
This guy? I think it's a camera.
Is the camera? Or is it some sort of offside spotting? Contraption.
Yeah, in the movie they do these experiments with putting the camera everywhere, like inside the ball, or making, like trying to do movie shots from different angles and so on. It's really crazy, beautiful.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and yeah. So one of the things that one of the major forces that led me to try to create this game on football was reading Galeano and Soriano, and so these two are two well-known South American writers, and they're of course not known because of football. They are known because of the quality of the writings, yeah, like Galeano is the guy who said football in the stadium is a religion without atheists. That's also very interesting. So, yeah, and like for Galeano, that you can if you stop a moment and you see the game from the different roles, also you can find so many things in the game. Like the goalkeeper is very fascinating for poets, and Wim Wenders did a movie on the goalkeeper anxiety.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Actually.
It's an incredibly boring movie.
Yes, it is.
And I liked it a lot, actually. So well, I have a special passion for boring movies, but
yeah, something. Good thing with boring movies is that they actually, because I've tried to understand why some movies are so incredibly boring and so incredibly interesting, is because they actually give you the time to think.
Yeah.
They give you the time to parse the image and actually think. Whereas a very very frantic movie never lets you do any of the thinking.
Yeah, that's why in football drama. Just little to do with it, but it's a turn-based game without counters, so you can take half an hour to think about a move before, which is respect in the coach character Rocco. Rocco is the coach in the game, and he's a very calm looking guy. He's not calm at all inside, but so that's one thing we thought about. Yes, and yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
And
I was meaning to ask you, those literary influences of the game. I mean, are they going to be represented in a more overt and obvious way too, perhaps?
Yeah, this is a problem I'm thinking a lot about, because of course we are reaching, well, not close actually, but halfway to an alpha, and of course while you're developing a game, when you're really developing a game, there's like you have to, if you want to finish it, which you may not want to. I mean, but in our case, we definitely want to. So you have to throw away like 98% of the idiots.
Yes.
Okay. So all this material that's available in these slides, I feel like a guilt. I have a bit of a sense of guilt of not representing it, but I also feel that it does come through in very indirect ways. So some things, like the most crazy things, if you're a football expert, which I found that most people who watch football are not just watching; they're actually experts. And this is like everybody who watches football, apart from me. So if I say, I don't know, who's this like left back defender of England I never heard of, and they all look at me. Oh, man, he plays in City. You don't. And before that, he played in Real Madrid, and he was sold 50 million pounds and everything. And okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And because I think that part of the fun of football is actually, analyzing and understanding and actually debating what you would have done instead if you were in the shoes of the coach, or if you were actually playing in the team. And I remember there was this horrible, hated right back. He was actually a right back in Panathinaikos when I was actually actively watching football, and everyone hated him. Everyone thought that he was a horrible player. And at some point, there were some friends who ran into him, at the pitch, and they sort of played with the guy. And he was a god among them. He was like a brilliant, fantastic, professional, super player, and he looked like so shit to us. Which is so, but still, you don't care about those technicalities. You want to have this very, very concrete opinion on why things should be the other way. And it's fun, it's interesting, and you actually do get to, people don't just think that they know things, but they actually do know. They do know that, the history of the player. They do know how, Real Madrid played its particular system. They do know how, Italy was really good with the offside trap back in the early 80s. They know those things because they've really poured the hours into the home.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I actually have no idea what's the motivation behind that, but it's okay. But
it's interesting, it's mechanics. It's like systems you understand.
Yeah.
I think it's very gamey.
Yeah. That's a very good point. It's probably a way of having system thinking, approaching system thinking in an easy way somehow. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that most of the references I already have in the game. There are so many about crazy things that happened. England, its Premier League, the history. Some things are there, but many things aren't. So I don't know. I try to always mediate between what I know and what I'm writing. But I think most of the representation of the world I present here is still to be done, because most of the narrative writing has still to be done. I mean, I have plot, I have some dialogues, and the mechanics of the game are working, which of course is the first thing you need to do, otherwise a game will hardly ever come out. But the narrative is not, so I hope that I will find ways to express most of what is coming, but it will be a problem.
I think that it already, to someone who hasn't actually played the game, like me, the way you say it already feels different. It already feels close to what I think you're aiming for. So that's good. Maybe it's, Danielis who's kissing and saying things in the chat. Art. Maybe that art has been informed by this whole overall discussion, which probably it is.
Yes.
And the way choices seem to have been abstracted in a very meaningful and understandable and more interesting way. But, it's subtle, probably. But I think it's there from where I'm sitting. It's there.
Well, we hope. What I can tell you is that the art is not just any art style. but it's been thought and redone and destroyed and rebuilt. And there are hints of football of the 30s in the style, which you may see in the illustrations.
Right.
So that's a thing coming out. So there's a little retro feeling, but not in the game, but in the illustrations. And then we use, for representing gameplay, a very, very abstract and so evocative, we hope, thing where you're just having these little circles playing. So I don't know, I hope that something comes up. So if we go on the slides, we see like Nick Hornby with his extremely famous British writer, and the movie Fever Pitch is a nice movie actually. And there's a thing amazing. Some of the beautiful things I discovered is like that in England there has been a wave of sport writing. So the sport writing style has been evolving, and it's become very modern and very, let's say, fast-paced and rich. And so like this, my favorite year is this mostly unknown short stories and writers from all over England, and often they talk like these small matches, local matches, and which in England is something very important, and still has a lot of people following and watching.
That's interesting.
And that's way more interesting than Real Madrid against Bayern.
I can imagine that.
And so I mean, there's a whole lot of literature there. And then of course there's Pasolini, who was a footballer. And he was playing.
That I never imagined, to be honest.
He
never struck me as someone who was like really interested in football, let alone someone who actually played.
Yeah, he really played. He tried to play really in teams, and he was crazy about football. He was crazy. But actually, if you know about something about his poetics, and his poetics is always rooted in people, and how poor people and how the meaning of life, the meaning of earth, is in the poor people, so you see how football, as played as you see it here, how it could be fascinating, important for him, because he found this genuine spirit. And he writes some really refined stuff, analysis, and he tries a combinatorial analysis of football using the tools that he had, which was generative grammars. And so it's very funny. Of course, it doesn't work that much, but he sees like the moves of the footballers like generating a grammar of football, and yeah, I mean it's amazing writing. Yeah,
that's super interesting, to be honest.
And Peter Handke and Saba, who's an Italian poet of the 40s. It wrote a beautiful book, football poetry.
Right.
And Saviano recently wrote a book about kids playing football and having problems with Camorra, and all this all of course comes together with Dali, and this is
yeah, because I'm certain that Dali was never a footballer, though.
He wasn't a footballer. No, it doesn't seem so. But his theory that the Gare de Perpignan is actually the where the universe was started, which the more you think of it, more convincing I find it. It's not that place, La Gare de Perpignan. So it was there, the train station, before the universe started, and then the universe clearly, obviously, as he said, started from there. And I find that this was, when I saw this, okay, this is where all the ideas about football drama come together under this beautiful idea. Yeah.
Excellent.
Isn't that perfectly coherent?
Absolutely, yeah. It's solid. It's really
scientifically solid.
So, you know, everything that's solid melts into thin air. So yeah, it's solid enough. It's solid enough.
Yes. Yes.
Matters.
Yeah. And yeah, but then another thing I discovered is the literature. Not poetry or novels, but analysis. So the sociological and economical and philosophical analysis of football as a phenomenon, because as a world phenomenon, it's really strange and somehow important. Though not, it's the common perception is that football is economically very important because the footballers, they earn so much and so on. But actually, as an economic force, football is totally relevant.
Yes, it is.
In the sense, if you take like one steel factory in England, they did this calculus. One steel factory actually moves more money than the whole of British football. Way more money. Okay, in a sense, as an industry, it doesn't move that much money. Okay, if you compare it to real industry, the real industry in the real world. Okay, so but it's because so few people get so much money, they get a lot of news, and people are so popular. So you think, oh, football is a main industry. No, it's economically relevant and worldwide, but it makes a lot of news. In this sense, the space it occupies in news and things, it's enormous. So in that sense, it's powerful. Okay.
And it spends its money flamboyantly, as you said. I mean,
yes,
it's different paying 1,000 people 10 million, pounds, and it's different paying a single person 10 million pounds. So that makes a splash.
Exactly.
And it's also, it's the fact that you pay someone whom people love to watch.
Yeah.
And someone who's sort of could be a local hero, could be, globally hated or whatever, but he's someone people want to know more about, especially regarding his ability in the field. So it's sort of, it's always about more things than just the money someone earns. It's about what he's done to earn these things.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, there's also a perception of how ridiculous this is, in the sense of paying someone who's just kicking the ball around this huge amount of money. It doesn't make sense, but money is not handled with sense anywhere today. So people just pushing button on a computer in New York with a financial transaction that are probably damaging for everyone, they are earning more than Ronaldo. So it doesn't make sense anyway. So
yeah, I would definitely agree on that. And the thing is that if we argued about any sort of meritocracy, things would be too complex to just focus on football. So let's move past the economics.
Yeah.
And focus on the actual thing.
But about the studies around football, this I'm always very fascinated by Barth. He's applying anthropological analysis to contemporary life is always brilliant and fun and illuminating. And in particular, of course, he did this beautiful booklet on sports that you can still find.
It's of the humans or of the men? How would you translate, les hommes? Is it humans or men?
Mankind.
Oh, mankind, okay, so humans in general.
Yeah, this is the French version, but there's an English version too.
Right.
And, this is a bit of change of the subject. Some people did analysis of again trying to answer the question of why football is so popular, and having features like how much you need to trust your partners in the game during the game to be the
That's very interesting.
It's an interesting analysis, and football somehow is in between. soccer here. Okay.
Yes,
yeah, depending on your style, you can depend more or less. And this is also something you can find in football drama, because football drama is a binary choice, the gameplay minute by minute, and you can always pick whether to play solo or team, so at some of these things, again, I have this sense of guilt because they come all in traces, in hints.
Yes, but that, I would argue that especially in this case, that would make sense.
Yeah, so we don't want to.
If you modeled it too rigidly, it would probably feel weird.
Yeah, and there are already games doing this. So if you go Football Manager, you can enter a million details about, and we are definitely. So the idea of football drama is to stay in between a FIFA. So we don't want, not in between. Let's say we don't want to do neither. We don't want to model the gameplay, and we're not interested in the details of management. You are living the life of a coach, so and somehow, actually, also this has been studied statistically, coaches don't really know what they're doing. So statistically, the impact of a coach on a team is practically irrelevant. You can determine. This is really funny because people who know a lot about football will tell me that it's totally wrong what I'm saying. But if you just look at the stats, the cold stats, there's a beautiful book on this, and there's a little impact, not because of the coach, but because of you fired and got a new coach. Then there's a little curve statistically of increasing results. Not too frequently, but you could put anyone. You could put anyone there, and the results are determined by the quality of the players.
Do you know what I would argue, though, that especially in football, one of the things that really sets it apart is that statistics are less relevant than in any other sport. Like, you could have a player who's done everything wrong, everything wrong, and he somehow manages to score a goal at the 92nd minute.
Well, yesterday, if you had watched Iran play against Portugal and getting this close to winning, again, that is typical of football. You never know, but now, because here we're not reasoning statistically, we're looking at a single match. So if you look at a single match, of course, that's what makes it beautiful. The underdog, and this is a big theme in football drama. What make people love, really, at least some people really love football, is the underdog theme. Is the theme of the underdog. That is, in football, the underdog, Leicester. A team like Leicester 2 years ago can win the Premier League. So this caused an enormous enthusiasm about the Premier League, because that was the proof that the underdog can win. So this is really important. So
I couldn't agree more.
But still, if you take big numbers and statistically, statistics actually can tell you a lot about the sport. There's one thing. This is really funny. I want to tell you, and I noticed this also in the current World Cup, that good teams and good teams that have technically skilled players always make the corners play with the ball that has an effect going against the ball towards the incoming player, so they can do a splendid hit with the head of the leg and smash it inside, and that looks beautiful. Okay.
Okay.
Actually, statistically, it's way easier and more likely to score if you swirl the corner towards the goal. Of course, the goals that you score in this way are usually messy because the defender catches it, it bounces, and there's a mess, and there's a brawl, and the ball goes in. Okay, so statistically, if you take this is clear. Statistically, that's the best way to hit a corner if you want to score. But the best, I looked at this because I knew this. All the good teams, they never do this. They always look for the beautiful goal. So they always swirl far. Someone comes running and tries a volley, which is extremely hard, extremely unlikely that it will be hit. But if they score the match, of course. So, I mean, I think this is beautiful. I'm pretty sure that the coaches, actually, I know it. It's a fact that the Premier League, at least teams, have statisticians at their service, so they're doing all the statistical analysis. But the coaches and the players completely ignore that and do the opposite.
This is incredibly interesting because and you can see that especially in certain teams that it's not just a matter of aesthetics. Sometimes it's a whole philosophical approach. Like and you can also see it in national teams, which is even weirder that you want, for example, the Brazilian team wants them to look good.
Yes.
You know, the French want to pass the ball a lot. And,
yes.
You know, it's those weird, almost metaphysical qualities that make things like the Mundial so intriguing, even to people who have almost grown past football, but will probably.
Yeah, well, you see it even in the most commercial of all championship, the Premier League. What's bizarre, I think it's cool, it's nice that the English style of football is, of course, it's become incredibly technical, but the speed that you see in that championship, you don't see in any other championship. And this is why it's such a high level championship. And so there are some things that I must bring you. You're not, I think, very updated with news about football. And I must bring you the bad news that Brazil has lost it's at least 3 World Cup, that it plays a much more standard technical football.
Yeah, I sort of noticed that last time. It was really sad.
But still, there's still traces of that. And so one thing. Well, I'll tell one thing has nothing to do with what we're saying. Too much love, but there's one thing. One thing I hope. Well, I hope that when you do games, you hope to have some kind of influence. Then it may turn out to be the opposite. Okay, so there are some things I think, and one for sure is that football drama is like meant as a little therapy. In the sense, it may you play football drama and then maybe you had enough.
Right. Yeah. I would say that you do make a rather convincing point. Yes, I wouldn't disagree, to be honest.
So, like, you have football drama, and you get into this crazy notion of your football, and then, okay, I understood more or less why humanity loves it, and now let's move on to something else. So, that's a very ambitious, of course, but that's actually one of the aim of the game.
Well, it will show, I would say. That's my take.
I make a spoiler. So the spoiler is this, that you can win somehow the game and lose the championship, and you can win the game and abandon the football world totally. Okay. That's a possible winning outcome of the game. So that's one of the ways maybe in which this message may come through, and be very happy about it. So So yeah,
that's very interesting, to be honest. It's a bit like, Cultist Simulator. In a way.
Yeah, well, I haven't. I haven't played it much. So
yeah, don't let me spoil it for you. But it's
Daniele,
you can win in several ways, and you actually get to define what a win is like.
Oh, that's very interesting. You don't in football drama, but it has multiple endings. So because it's not a generative story, it's a scripted story.
Obviously, it has to be. But it's, you said the Steam page is about to go live, right?
The Steam page should be live next week. Okay.
Excellent. And Cicciolina, excellent. Even better.
So So we see many topics have been dealt with by using the football theme, and yeah, I know.
Yes.
And somehow.
Hey, what happened to?
Yeah.
What happened to China? Oh well.
No, in the sense that there's also really a lot of rubbish running around football, and like there's a lot of violence, and
yes,
and so I think this is really a mistake, in a sense, an interpretative mistake, because so football is there because we don't do wars, and in fact countries in war don't play football one against the other. So it's like so it's a metaphor for war, which is meant to replace the real thing. Okay. So it's not just war. There's some other sociologists take it for hunting. So running after the ball is like catching a prey. So there are several metaphors that are clearly, but it's clearly touching something deep and something like tribe confrontation. But in a way that is meant to be like catharsis, as you can teach me. Okay.
Yeah, it could be, though I think it could also trigger warlike situations and incite, nationalistic passions in a very, very nasty way. And I have actually seen that happen. I mean,
yeah, but my point is just that these people are betraying the very nature of the ritual. So
fair enough.
So they're really so dumb that they don't understand that they're going there in order to dispel. Instead of, it's like pointing to the moon and looking at the finger. They're taking the ritual as the real thing. So instead of saying, okay, so now we use this metaphor, we feel the aggressiveness, we play through, we see the result, that's it. No, instead they say, oh no, but let's really go and beat them up. But that is betraying the real, the purpose of the thing. The purpose of the thing is that you feel better after it because your aggressiveness somehow has expressed itself.
I fully agree with you, and really hope, that the game could actually convince people to always look at things like that. Always, please. This is the actual, true, honest, and nobly poor spirit of the game, so please do not betray it. It's an international ritual.
Yeah, and it really needs a few really stupid people to ruin the whole thing.
Yep.
And so.
And thankfully, we have enough.
Yeah. So
we do.
Yeah, but they all over the world, in Italy, but in many other countries too. The supporters union sometimes have got linked with criminal organizations and drug dealing and all kind of mess. England, where the situation was worse than in any other country, has brought it under complete control by now.
At least inside the
in England, yes, in England, and and I don't know if it's a good thing, because
this sort of violence will. I would argue that this is violence that would have had to happen anyway. It's something that society would produce and would have to express in some way. And when it's not expressed in, via football, it will probably be expressed somewhere else in the same manner.
Yes, in fact, this is what I think too. I mean, it's not meant to be as an excuse or something, or defending football, but I really think that people that go there and say, okay, now we go there, notice that typically these people never watch the actual game. They go, and I notice it in the stadium. The people that go there to kick the others, they are not really interested in the game. They're not really interested.
I remember one of the last times that I actually went to see a game live, and we only found tickets, it was the last moment thing, and we only found tickets at the super hardcore gate.
Mm-hmm.
And we could not actually look at the pitch. It was impossible because he had all those slogans and, flags and shit. And it was impossible to know what the score was.
Because
it was super interesting, also slightly scary.
So they found a place where they can join a tribe and somehow go and beat the other guys up. I don't think this has much to do with football, actually.
Not really. It does have a lot to do with drama, though. So
yes. Yes. Well, in the game, you can interact with the supporters in various ways, also not very correct ways. So, like you can provoke the opposing supporters from the bench or things like this. So
that's excellent. That's excellent. Someone should have done this. Good that you're doing that.
Okay. Well, there are so many crooks in football. But in the football management, again, it's really a funny. I mean,
yes,
it's so bad that it's beyond belief.
I think there was this wonderful and extremely funny video by John Oliver at some point regarding the World Cup and FIFA or something like that. It was absolutely true and extremely funny. It was comical, it was satirical in its evilness. It was like,
about this guy. And it was about with the FBI agents waiting outside in Switzerland.
Exactly.
Meeting room. That's a good. It's not unheard of. I mean, this is the FIFA president. I mean,
it's super weird.
And he's still not in jail. He's in Russia now. He's watching the games.
Of course he is. How could it be any other way? That's the point.
So you see,
we're used to that. I mean, I would argue that especially the president of one particular team in Greece, he should always be arrested the moment he becomes president, because something dodgy is happening. The team is so big, and that for someone to be willing to lose all that money, they are definitely hiding something.
Yeah, and it's money that gets burned because it never comes back. Yeah. There's a history of that. There's a tradition of that in football. So the money you put in football disappears. It never comes back. And
or it's laundered. It's always laundered, and it's
and it burns quickly. And in fact, when I was thinking where to set the game, I was, of course, tempted by Milan and Berlusconi, which, of course, is also interesting setting. But it was actually the Milan age was too serious and nothing really special happened. So, but another very interesting setting which I studied was Marseille. Because there another owner, he ended up in prison, and he did all kinds of stuff, and
I think I remember that.
Tapi, I think Tapi was what's called, and he was also very, very interesting. I think the Netflix produced a series that's not very good about this story.
So I found the guy who was Bernard Tapie.
Bernard, yes. And Yeah, well, I don't want
really disturbed managers.
too much money. It's really crazy stuff. Gold diggers. Yeah, the gold diggers are surrounding the footballers.
That was Valderrama. My sexto. Oh god.
This is like
bound to get very weird.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like and the North Korea. There's a North Korean player in Italy, and yeah, he played in Serie A last year, I think, and he's actually quite good.
Wow.
Yeah, and of course, when they ask him about North Korea, he says nothing. He never. No, he says nothing. He said nothing.
Okay.
Like, if I say something, they will immediately kill me or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or probably there's not. Like, I mean, according to, as I have at least one friend who has visited, and the thing with North Korea, it's like so exaggerated in a really silly way. So yeah, things are weird. Okay, if you compare it to Saudi Arabia, it's a fucking paradise.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course.
Seriously. let's stop. I mean, it's good that the modern West has found a few scarecrows from tiny countries that it's how big is North Korea? I mean, how much? Like 40 million people? How much is that?
Yeah.
It's really not much of a thing. But I would love to have a North Korean footballer somewhere.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
What's really interesting would be those little teams like the one in Germany, the come on, St. Pauli.
Yes.
And that's so interesting. Or like there's this local team we have here. It's called Asteras Exarchion, and it's like only based on immigrants and refugees, and it's got this huge anarchist following.
In Brazil, there's a gay club. There's
excellent. All those super and all those things fit almost naturally into football, which is amazing.
Yes.
It's like no one says that, oh, this is weird. Everyone says, oh yeah, I would expect that to happen in that sport.
Yeah, you see, because this is one of the first thing we talked about, the fact that yeah, you can use it, but there's always a little anarchic side because it's a game with this ball, and I think it's suspicious for power. It's always a suspicious game.
Yes, I think you are right after all. You sort of made a very, very concrete point then. It is anarchic by nature.
This is a beautiful video about they really not put like, oh, the teacher has been bought by the school and we have $50 million. Oh, it's the best of the teachers, which actually that's how it should be. I mean, if we were in a society that would make sense, but we are not. So it's not this way, and.
That would be. I think I must have either watched that clip at some point or have it mentioned to me, because I almost remember how it plays, so it makes perfect sense.
But
nice stadium.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Now it's housing. It has been turned into housing. But
very interestingly, in Greece there was. At the Olympiacos Stadium, which was built during the Olympic Games, as everything that was dodgy in this country. They weren't allowed to build residences, so they built suites for the stadium, which eventually sort of morphed into residences after a while.
Yeah, of course.
So you actually used the stadium itself as a real estate loophole. As a planning loophole to actually build posh buildings.
We have in Italy. We are very familiar with those techniques. No need to teach us anything about that. Good to know.
Very nice.
So really, so many people hate football. This is another topic. We were talking about why people love football, but actually a lot of people hate football. Really, a lot of people, and well, probably not hate caused by boredom, by people talking only about football.
And yeah, but that's not hating football. I would argue. I think that people can be indifferent. I mean, they could just not care. And they might be tired of their, friends or spouses or whatever caring too much. But I won't say I haven't met anyone who actually hates football. They might hate, fans. They might hate the violence. They might hate the blind faith of certain people put into certain teams. But football per se, can you hate it? I mean, really hate it?
Yeah, they will tell you, oh, I hate football, but what they mean is actually I'm so bored by my friends talking about football that I'm telling you this. Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. That's what I believe too. Because I think it's not something that you can hate. You can just, and even if you don't like it, you would probably enjoy watching a 10-minute reel of cool things happening, and you would probably appreciate it.
And
but it's
this now we reach a point. We were talking about the catharsis and in fact this when I understood this, it was like a catharsis for war. Many things started to make sense about it, but then I found, of course, that this is the conclusion of almost any anthropologist and sociologist that studies the matter. So it was a great original conclusion. But anyway,
well, still, it was a valid one at least.
It was valid at least.
You reached the conclusion that people will spend their lives.
And
can you hate catharsis? Good question. And I like that. I like that punchline so much, which is where somehow enforced.
And football also has evolved in time. That's another theme. The rules have evolved a bit, and I want to make a little speech. As this video will be seen by millions and millions of people,
countless billions,
countless billions, and it's against VAR, so the video assistant referee, and because you have birds.
Nope.
There's some. Okay, no, it's over now.
There's some.
No.
Yeah, there's some sort of.
No, it's okay. But anyway, so I want to talk against VAR because I think that it one of the nice things of football, it's so unpredictable, and also the speed that it's somehow always changing. You don't interrupt it. And also I think also the referee mistakes are part of the game, are part of the fascination of the game and of the drama and so absolutely don't make it more mechanical, don't make it more deterministic. It's not American football. Don't interrupt every few minutes.
Absolutely.
And so I think some things that are changing are really bad. Some things are very good in time, like you can't back pass to the goalkeeper, or even earlier you have the offsides. I mean, these things make the game more dynamic, not less dynamic. But some things, making it more breaking the rhythm, making it more mechanic, that is definitely ruining something really at the core of it. So
though we have to admit that the horrible referee is one of the most infuriating things. Like, this sense of unfairness of this thing, horrible unfairness.
Yeah, well, Italy, in Italy we're still always thinking about the referee that threw us out from the Japanese World Cup. That was so bad that
for example,
that is so unforgettable. And I actually, during all the studies, I rewatched that match, and It's incredible. So anyway.
Yeah, that's very big. So we shouldn't break the flow of the game, but we should probably, publicly whip bad referees.
Oh yes, definitely.
That's something that makes everyone happy.
Not the referee.
Not the referee, but it would be
almost everyone.
A very concrete lesson in morality, and he would probably thank us for the rest of his life. And he would evolve into a better human. He would realize his true potential as a referee, and everyone would have this sense of actual catharsis. That, yes, we may have missed the match, but he's been
no, that's like a real catharsis.
Exactly, it's like a typical, it's like a by the book catharsis. So why not?
Okay. So, well, we already talked about comebacks and the underdogs, so Iceland, Leicester, and so on. Something interesting about football is the language, and this is something that really in football drama there's a lot about. And this book has been inspiring me enormously by Adam Harry and I must say that I think the English commentators and journalists are using a particularly evocative and full of bizarre language. And in this wonderful book, he presents so many terms of all the English that are actually never used in everyday English, but they used exclusively for football action, and everybody knows them, and they use like a cliche, so again and again. But if you then ask yourself, but how ever am I going to use this term in real life? Nobody even knows what's the meaning, but in football it's perfectly clear, and probably every nation has. In Italy for sure, maybe not as rich, but there's a lot of even like in Italy we say incornata comes from corner to when a striker hits the ball with the head. So that's we generated a new term for which also mixes with horns, so it mixes with the Italian terms, and there's a lot of things like this, and there's a whole lingo. And so it's funny when sometimes I describe to Daniele when he has to do some illustrations what's the meaning of this situation of things, and I use terms naturally, and he says, well, what does this term mean? I have no idea. So
I'm trying to think whether we have any of those terms. Nothing that instantly comes to mind. Yeah, there should be some, like terminals, technical terminals, technical terms essentially, but not so much as a lingo or a slang.
Yeah, I think English is particularly rich in this sense. Maybe because of the whole story. I don't know. It's really striking how much they use remote old English or French or Italian, even Italian terms sometimes. It's funny how the English are like have this manic interest in Italian football, which has become by now really bad. In fact, it's a very good thing the Italian team is not the World Cup, because it would have been a complete disaster. I mean, given the quality of the teams, and yeah, this is just he like in the book. There's 100 ways to say that they score the goal, 100, and it's really interesting, and then even they use, like when they do a beautiful shot that just goes out, they say, well, he kicked it almost too well. It's a typical way. If you do the logical analysis of that, doesn't make any sense. I mean,
it doesn't.
It doesn't. But one of the most common expressions in football commenting. So it's really, language is really interesting. And also other things he points out in the book, like there's a universal language for faking pain on the field. And I during this World Cup, it's universally, and it's always the same. The players really all speak the same body language. So like when they say they do the number one, they're clearly faking it. It's completely fake. And it's so funny because in the refereeing has been quite good in the World Cup, especially in using the fact that fake pain is ignored, but they've been really efficient in this. So you continuously see these. They do number one. They look up. The game is going on, and so they suddenly jump off and they start playing again. Quickly get back to their place because, of course, they're missing the game. So yeah. Well, both 1, 2, and 3 are usually fake, and there's a whole thing. Of course, in Italy they believe that only the Italian players fake so much, but it's a totally. Even the English by now do it.
I think everyone does that.
Everyone. It's a universal thing, and
yeah, with the exception of the US players who really do not know how to play the game. So
yeah, but they didn't reach the World Cup, in fact.
Yeah, but usually I remember it was a game, Mexico versus the US, like I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, whatever. And the Americans had this notion of, oh, now it's been a good game, we're winning 2-0, and now let's all be friends, which is like so utterly, completely wrong for football. And they were being like hit really hard and failing to understand why this brutal thing is happening to us. Why are they trying to actually hurt us? And say yes, because you're winning. That's
typical. The team that's losing makes a lot of fouls and tries to reach you back. And so you're anybody who knows about football, if you win in 2-0, the other going for the hard game. Of course,
exactly.
It's obvious.
You should have been prepared for that. I mean, come on.
You have to fight back. No, it's the other way.
It's they're weird. Yeah. Also, I think I'm starting to develop. What's the eye sickness that happens to you after a certain age?
Like dying.
Short.
Like dying.
No. I'm trying to think. Come on.
After a certain age,
Yeah, after a certain age, you. No, what I'm getting is I'm actually getting farsightedness.
Okay.
Myopia. Yeah. This sort of reduces my nearsightedness, which is really weird.
Yeah, but it's normal. It's normal.
Yes, I know it's normal, but it's also slightly disheartening, I would say.
Well, maybe you should play more football. And,
I'll try now that I've stopped smoking, essentially.
Okay.
I can give it another shot.
Well, that's another thing. Like Socrates did. Football players used to smoke. Now, of course, now they can't because they have to run so quickly that nobody.
Also, he died young. I think also Socrates died really young.
Yes, but that was because of the drinking.
Yeah, still, that's also something we should get back to. But I was trying to think. I was actually discussing that a few days or a week ago. Like I was trying to think of the World Cup players that they really made an impact. Those since I've been watching it, I can only think of Maradona. I can think of Socrates. I can think of Georgi Hadzi, and definitely Roberto Baggio, and Mila, the guy from Cameroon. And as I was thinking, they're also like a very, very weird, and they have nothing that connects them to each other. Okay, maybe Socrates and Maradona, both more politically sort and stuff, but everyone else is like so different in their styles and mentality. And yeah, it was weird. Because if you get to think about it, they're always very, very strong and unique personalities that play the game in an extremely unique way. Which is always very interesting.
Also, what makes me think about this, what you were saying in the beginning, that I tendentially do not agree much with, is the fact that you're saying today we don't have those players. But actually, factually, it is true. And I don't agree in the sense that we always tend to look at the past with a more generous eye. But I think, you know, these guys were like in the 70s, and it was normal for people to be more socially involved. So in a sense, I think the reflection, and now all these players, they really don't care about anything, they just watch their phones. Of course, the exception is not always like this, and so on, but that's probably just a mirror of society, you know.
I would argue it's a dialectical mirror. You know, it's a mirror that actually distorts and shapes and then gets shaped back. It's like the mirror is not 100% objective. It is influenced by other things, and it can distort things. And I mean, I'm trying to think that, you know, the way football is presented, it's so occasionally so incredibly polished and so, you know, shiny, which it feels sort of, you know, off, weird.
Yes.
Not supposed to be this super luxuriant thing.
Yes. In fact, like the VAR is the same direction. So making
this is a horrible idea.
You make it super. Even these are guys that they have to go to war instead of us. So I mean, it's two tribes going to war, and it's a messy thing. It's not and of course the game still is a very messy and violent thing. So.
Fair enough, yeah.
And with cheating and people like this, you see. So Ibrahimovic is his autobiography is quite an amazing read, and he's a really interesting and terrible guy, also very generous, and with a difficult story behind his life, and as a Swedish immigrant, and that's a beautiful book. If you ever have time to read it.
I will probably. Seriously, my to-read list is the biggest. And actually, reading is the only thing I'm doing. The only thing I'm actually catching up with is books.
Great.
Which is at least something. Some sort of shameful list is getting small.
Okay.
Well, and they're also young. I mean, like Ibrahimovic is still young. He's like, yeah.
Well, Cantona, who's become an actor, he would require a call only for telling about him. I mean, the things he did, and his kung fu.
He's amazing.
He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, like a huge larger than life.
Yeah, and he has some ideas about society and things. He's another interesting guy.
Absolutely.
The movie is amazing. And then one last thing I would like to, at least one more thing I would like to talk about is something I understood about the manager. You remember the thing I was telling you before about the fact that the coach doesn't actually statistically change things much.
Right.
And at a certain point, I understood this by reading the books. I said that the coach is like the king. So the fact that he does nothing, that does not mean that he does not have a role. Okay.
Right.
So the less he does, the more crucial he is. Okay, so he is like the symbol of the tribe that is getting into battle, and he's like in the center, And if you look at how coaches are presented in the rituals, I think this really makes sense, and it made more and more sense. And in fact, that is how you are in football drama. So you're like you're really totally passive, a totally passive presence. And the only thing that the game actually measures, this is a big spoiler, is your karma and your chaos. So these are the two dimensions. And you can have two styles. You can lead through chaos, or you can lead through karma. And they can both lead you to winning the game. But it's a completely different.
Super interesting.
Two things I measure in the game. And this and only this. And this was inspired by this game. Yeah, and in fact, so royal families always come with superstition and gossip. And this is exactly what you get. So there's a huge amount of gossip about the coaches and the managers in football and the players. Okay, so and it's exactly like the same gossip that the royal family gets. It's exactly the same, and the girls and the women, and he hates him, and he said about him that he's wrong, and they don't like him, and they won't shake hands. The two kings that don't shake hands at the end of the battle. Okay, that's very bad. That's big news. Okay, and. So I found this, and you know, like there are several pitches in England where they're buried voodoo dolls and the goals. Of course, so there's really a lot of silly things around.
Do you remember he was a coach for Italy?
Yes.
He had, this little vial of holy water.
Yes.
He was like a horrible coach. And he used to just uncork it and spill a little bit of that. When was that? It was 2006, Trapattoni. Yeah, probably, yeah, he was the one. I have to Google that. Because it was so incredibly funny.
So bad. So shameful.
Yeah, he's the one.
Yes, you see all the magic and ritual and beliefs and I mean, it all comes together. So he's doing nothing. He has water. He just drops of water, but it has a meaning. So it's completely crazy. And there's a book called Football Voodoo, which of course I read. And actually I was going to name the game as Football Voodoo, but Voodoo is actually a religion, so you should be careful about what you're saying. So there's some racist undertones which I totally didn't want to have in the game, so I removed it.
Yeah.
And
but it's very interesting. I think that also people watching. I remember watching like half the World Cup with a chair in my head because something like that. It makes everyone really superstitious because there's, especially as a spectator, there's nothing you can do to really influence the thing. So you have to do random shit in order to cosmically influence it on a totally different level. It's really weird. Yeah, I do remember the film.
Yeah, but it totally works. It totally works.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
It can be statistically proven.
Exactly.
Okay, so well, of course, this is like Mourinho. Mourinho is a very interesting guy. I mean, I really don't like him the way he's a player.
Yeah, me neither, to be honest.
But nobody does. But apart from himself, but he's very, very interesting, and he causes a lot of gossip, and so he's very useful for the
definitely
journalists for the game. But he actually said one interesting sentence in his life, which is really interesting, and it's this, and it's people who know only about football know nothing about football.
Absolutely agree there.
That's
yeah.
an interesting remark. He's one of the guys who first started using lots of statistical studies in his.
Right.
That has been an important point.
And his coaching, right? Yeah, I don't know. I think that he's from what I've seen, his teams were always sort of dull. They were, no, nothing spectacular.
Yeah.
Nothing
Negative karma. I mean.
yeah, exactly. It's come on. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, I remember I absolutely despised the race from 2004. It was a horrible team, and I hated that. And they just won, by playing something that was the direct opposite of football, which was incredibly irritating.
Yeah, well, also the expression "parking the bus," which has, of course, the British commentator and I use. That's also very, very bright image, and it happens so often in football that you just and he does it all the time, of course. I mean,
yes, he does. I know.
Okay. Well, Marseille we already talked about, but I didn't. So the championship is set in England, but there is some Marseille that may come up in the game, in the late game.
Right.
And then there are games about football, video games about football. Of course, there are many, but actually people play only two, which are FIFA and Football Manager. So people again there sometimes confuse the levels and the metaphors, just like the supporters hitting each other. And so this guy was banned from the technical area, so he's playing the game from the ladder.
Can you give me 1 second to check something, because I really have to open the door?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, give me one second. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll be back. Hold on a second.
Okay. Let me check on YouTube how this is going. And whether it's still working or not. Yeah, it's still working. Yeah, amazing. Okay. Let me see if this actually I can show this. No, I can't. Because it's an embedded video. What's coming more? Yeah, this is about the gay soccer league in Brazil, which is very nice. He's back.
Really sorry about that.
No problem. No problem.
Check it.
I was wondering how much we. Yeah, well, there's a lot of interesting writing around football. And some really funny people, and so this is like a remark of a friend of mine. And anyway, and finale video games. Yeah, there has been an Italian software house. Tried to do something like football drama a few years ago. It's called the Lords of Football, and it was very different in style because it was 3D and so on. But the storytelling was this, and the ridiculous sides of it were there. It's really a beautiful project, but unfortunately, it was a bit too ambitious as it happened. So. It didn't work out, but it was really well done. And
what was it called?
Lords of Football. I think there's an old version you can find on Steam, but I wouldn't.
Right.
Now, now there's awareness even in FIFA. They did a storytelling version with a story in FIFA, I think last year, and I played it a bit. It's technically it's well done.
I can imagine that.
But of course, the writer had to stay between the boundaries of a FIFA. So it's totally predictable, not that great, let's say, not a masterpiece of storytelling.
Yes, but I can sort of imagine that.
But it's a bit lifeless. But still, it shows that they're aware of the fact that storytelling in football is so important. And
right.
So yeah, well, there's a lot of I Ching, the Book of Changes, in football drama. It plays a big role. This is actually a Philip K. Dick quote, because Philip K. Dick always has the Book of Changes in his stories. And actually, I use the Book of Changes sometimes in my life, and I think I'm a total believer. So excellent. If you want to have really, really good advice, infallible advice, you should consult the Book of Changes. And yeah, also the president of course, the owner of the club is a Russian billionaire. Of course, that's obvious.
Why not?
And he speaks in the Cock or Orange newspeak. Right. So you may have troubles understanding him, but that's a key to that's not a big spoiler of the game, to understand what he's saying. And yeah, this is basically it.
That's super.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger.
So yeah, but this was a really quick chat. I mean, almost 2 hours.
Yes, it was. You know, we had to cover things for all humanity.
Yes, so. We basically solved the problems humanity.
Yeah, and I think you're on a really good path. I mean, you know, this whole ritualistic aspect of football, provided it can be enforced. And
yes.
Especially, you know, combined with the public flogging.
I was thinking the same thing. Combined with the public flogging of the referee.
That would make the world a very safe and very peaceful place.
Yes.
For all.
So you're going for a referee career from now on.
Yeah. I'll be the new Colina or something like that. It's sort of I think it's very boring being a referee. I would actually. It's incredibly. I mean, you're so close and to the people doing the actual thing, and you're just, you're a crucial part of the whole game. But
nobody ever says, "Oh, this was heroic refereeing" or something.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's a job, but it's not easy. Still.
Yeah, definitely not easy. Definitely not easy.
Very, very, very difficult. Still, the floggings will help with overall quality.
Okay.
So, okay. Okay, I want to play the game someday. Come on. Release the thing. And the Kraken. Just release it.
Okay. Well, we hope to release the game in winter 2019.
Okay, that's close enough.
Yeah, I know.
That's definitely close enough.
And so anybody can subscribe to the beta, which is a free version, and it's both for desktop and mobiles. And we'll see what comes out of it, of course.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for spending so much time.
Thank you so much, Pietro. That was super fun and super enlightening to be honest.
It was really great. I think I understood also many things. I didn't know how many things were in the game, before talking with you.
That's excellent.
Like a discovery tour for myself.
Yeah, see, I should do that professionally, perhaps.
Yeah, therapy for game developers.
Yeah, game therapy. Why not? It's a great idea.
Okay, I'll say bye to the streamers, which are millions.
Okay.
I'll turn the streaming off.